Jeremy Dice is senior counsel. First Liberty Institute, Navy SEALs fighting for the rights of school-age kids is religious liberty. Yes, I do sometimes forget to shut off my mic. I've got a lot going on here. Things are a little squirrely this morning, so hang tight. Good morning, Jeremy.
Good morning, Fawn. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've got one computer wanting to fist fight with me. I've got so much going on. It's crazy. All right, but nothing's more important than my religious liberty, and everybody keeps talking about hate crime at this Islamic center. I do believe it was a hate crime, but why, and we'll get to the topic in a moment, but why aren't they calling what the Islamists are doing in the Jewish communities in New York City a hate crime? Why is that not a hate crime?
Well, you know what? I have not stayed abreast enough to tell you exactly what's going on in New York City to be able to weigh in on that. But look, I think religious liberty is religious liberty for all Americans, and we should never use religious liberty as a cover for some sort of illegal behavior.
Right. Period. End of story. And anybody who wants to go worship should be able to do so freely. So, you guys are fighting on behalf of some former U.S. Navy SEALs. What are they doing? Or have
in the
they
state
done?
of West Virginia, in the state of West Virginia, they have had a long time. They're one of the only states that does not allow for a religious exemption when it comes to the vaccines that students receive when going back to school. And look, I know right away we've got a lot of people that have a lot of opinions on this very topic, but I want you to stick with me for a second to realize that what is being asked of here, as what is being given in every other state practically. I think there's like 4 or 5 other states that are aligned with West Virginia, but almost every other state allows for some sort of religious exemption to their vaccines. And by the way, most states allow for some sort of medical exemption for vaccines. And so even if you are not of the religious persuasion to be against a particular vaccine, if you have a medical condition that requires it or suggests that you should not receive a vaccine, there is some discretion given to government leaders to say, look, if you got a medical reason or psychiatric reason or something like that, we'll allow you to, go to our schools without having the particular vaccines that we would require of everybody else. And so what the state is now trying to do is just simply institute a common sense application of religious liberty law that says, look, if we're going to exempt medical reasons, for example, for these vaccines, maybe we should stop and say, okay, are they really necessary? Do they really have an issue from a religious perspective? And let's stop, pause, and consider. And that's what the law is attempting to do. But of course, there are some that are opposed to that. The Navy SEALs have joined with us to file a brief at the Supreme Court of Appeals of West Virginia that is now considering the constitutionality of that very effort. And all that we are saying, and all that the SEALs are saying is, look, we remember back in COVID when the Navy SEALs were rubber stamp denied their exemption request for the COVID vaccine, and we know what kind of debacle ensued from there. In fact, I heard just yesterday that I think there were 22,000 some applications for exemption within our military, and less than 400 were granted during that time.
Wow.
So there was not an individual consideration that was given. It was just a mass denial of all these things. And the SEALs are saying that should not happen to our school-age children and to our families. These arguments are serious. They should be taken seriously. They should be given the same due weight of consideration that we give to any other level of discretion that our government officials make in a day-to-day life. And if they are successful in saying, no, the government does have a compelling justification for this, and there's no other way to accomplish that justification than by having to go through the vaccine, then fine. But let's stop, consider, and make sure that we have remained faithful to the first freedom of our Constitution, our religious liberty, and our rights of conscience.
Right. And, there are some kids, my kids aren't getting and my grandkids, they're not getting the COVID vaccine. That's the end of the story. And if they don't want them to do it, we'll homeschool them. It's that simple. But those Navy SEALs ended up getting not only themselves reinstated, but getting back pay and getting their retirements back and all of that, because Trump was like, you can't do this to them. And slowly they'll get back on their feet. So if anybody's going to fight for these kids, if anybody gets it, it's these guys.
Yeah, and thank goodness that they got their back pay and all of the things that you just mentioned, but that's only because that Donald Trump got back into office. There was no guarantee that was going to happen to them, and these SEALs know that. And that's why they're saying, look, these rights of conscience, these are precious things that have been given to us not by government. They have been secured by government and secured by men and women that serve in our armed forces. Yes, absolutely. but they are given to us by God. And so government itself has to make sure they are securing those civil liberties for every single person in this country. And that includes the kids that are going to school. And so if we view these religious liberties as important as they ought not to be less than, for instance, medical freedom or some other reason why the state official would say, look, we're going to give you an exemption from this requirement for medical, psychological, whatever reasons they may be, but we're not going to give you the same freedoms for something that's actually written in our Constitution, our religious liberty. And so wherever we go in our society, we need to remember that the government does a great many good things, but they are still the government and prone to not quite understand the intricacies of protecting our civil liberties. And so that's why we stop, we pause, we make sure that they say, okay, we've considered this fully. There's no other way we can accomplish this. We have to do it this way. And if that is what actually ends up happening, then perfectly fine. But at least we've stopped and considered whether or not this religious liberty, this core freedom that we have as a nation, has been fully and finally protected.
Yeah. So, I mean, you said most states do offer this, but West Virginia so far, no. Where are we with this? Are they considering it?
Yeah, there's been some action, I think, by the legislature and the governor, and now there is a lawsuit, as is the custom, it seems like, in our country, and it's before the highest court in the state of West Virginia, the Supreme Court of Appeals of West Virginia, and there is a lot of interest in the outcome of this case, I can assure you of that.
Yeah. You just mentioned the COVID-19 vaccine, and see, you'll get definitely down party lines reactions to whether or not you should have to get this vaccine. It's crazy how it became political when it's more about religion and health. So, but it is what it is. Jeremy Dice, Senior Counsel, First Liberty Institute. The Navy SEALs are helping fight for the rights of these school-age kids for their religious liberty because they know what it's like to be told, shut up, sit down, or lose everything. Some of them are finally getting it all back. Jeremy, where do people go to help you fight these fights because you do it for free?
Well, thanks. I'd send folks to firstliberty.org, F-I-R-S-T, liberty.org.
Everybody do that and help them fight the good fight when it comes to our religious liberties. Nothing could be more important. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Fawn.
Bye-bye.